This is the Journal Citation Reports 2021 release. I'm your presenter, Subhashrina. Please see this slide for a brief profile. So we start about what is the JCR? What does it try to convey? So the JCR is basically an annual report that distills citation trend data from the Web of Science co-collection, which helps you understand journal performance and provides you with transparent, publisher-neutral data and statistics that you need to make confident decisions about the journals across your institution. Now, the Journal Citation Reports is widely known in the community as the source for the journal impact factor, a very standard journal performance metric that has been used for the past almost 40 years. Now, the data that we have on the JCR represents a snapshot in time. For example, this year's edition reflects citations from literature published in 2020. Now, all of you who have been using JCR know that the journal citation reports included journals from the two flagship indexes of Web of Science, that was the Science Citation Index Expanded and the Social Sciences Citation Index. But from this year onwards, that is from 2021, the Journal Citation Report also includes journals from the Arts and Humanities Citation Index and the Emerging Sources Citation Index, thereby indexing more than 70% of the content available on the Web of Science co-collection. So, who uses the journal citation reports? Who should be using the journal citation reports? It could be used by publishers and editors. If you want to compare how does a journal perform directly against other peer journals or other competitor publishers in a certain subject area, if you'd like to understand which of the documents in your journal, which are the records, the publications in your journals that are performing the best to understand their citation profile, this is the information that you can get from journal citation reports. For librarians, you use journal citation reports to find quantitative data to justify your collection development decisions. So does my library collection include journals that are among the most cited journals in that particular subject area? You can evaluate your collections with your custom journal list. How many open access journals do I have in my library collection? So what is my faculty or institution's contribution to the journal performance? Where are we publishing the most? Which journals are citing our work the most? Which journals are we citing the most from our institution? Does my library have those journals which my researchers are citing the most? These are the kind of questions that librarians need answers to, and the journal citation report forms a definitive and reliable and, very importantly, publisher-neutral source for getting this data. And data scientists typically dive deeper into our data to understand the relationships between journals, to understand how disciplines interconnect with the citation network. And for researcher, the journal citation reports is a great avenue to understand where should I be submitting my work to. Am I submitting my work to the one of the most well-cited journals in that area? What is the probability of my manuscript getting accepted in that particular journal based on the articles that have been driving citation impact of that journal for the past 2 years? You can focus on publishing trends like open access. How quickly would your article be able to be seen by other people via open access if you publish in a particular journal? The Web of Science Journal Citation Reports is unique because of several different reasons. One of the reasons, of course, is the very, very strict selection criteria that we employ in order to ensure that no low quality journal makes its way into the Web of Science core collection as well as the journal citation reports. Each journal profiled in the journal citation reports has met the rigorous quality and impact standards documented in the Web of Science core collection editorial selection process. And we have been doing this for over 40 years. For over 40 years, the scholarly community has relied on the JCR as an authoritative source for journal metrics, and we take that role very seriously. So how do we ensure quality control? Each year, we do an extensive analysis to ensure that the data are accurate, objective, and complete, including screening for anomalous citation activity. So journals that display evidence of excessive self-citation and citation stacking are suppressed from the journal citation reports to support research integrity in scholarly publishing. And this is just not the only way that JCR supports research integrity. There has been a lot of controversy about the journal impact factor because it being a quantitative metric, and we all know that numbers, if not taken into context, do not mean anything, and therefore journal impact factor has often been misused, and particularly in researcher evaluation. So we have tried to make extensive changes to the journal profile pages on JCR to address this. In addition to the journal citation metrics, for example, journal impact factor, we provide you with multiple ways to understand about the journal's impact and influence. And that these are just not quantitative metrics. We are giving you information on journal citation reports about which are the contributing countries, to the journal's performance. So which countries have or regions have published the most in that particular journal in that particular period, which are the organizations that have published, which are the particular publications that have driven impact. So all the data that you see on journal citation reports is absolutely transparent. And there's access to the article data that can help you follow best practices for research evaluation. So please remember, journal citation reports just does not have a collection of numbers or quantitative metrics to give you idea or give you information about the journal's performance. There is a lot of source data, there's a lot of qualitative data that can help you put these numbers into context. And this multiple way to view impact creates a profile of the journal. It gives you a very 360-degree multi-dimensional view of the journal's impact and influence. And with this descriptive contributor and open access statistics, you understand how exactly is that journal positioned or placed in that particular research discipline going forward. And these are some of our, comments that we have received over the years from the users. We are neutral. We are not a publisher. We do not have plans to become one. So when you're looking at the collection or the, the list of journals on the journal citation reports, it is not biased towards any publisher. As long as a journal makes the cut or it satisfies the rigorous quality and impact standards set by our editorial team to be a part of the Web of Science core collection, it will be there on journal citation reports. And this is how we carefully weed out any predatory or non-peer-reviewed journals. Now, what is, of course, I've talked about transparency, and we have made a lot of changes over the years, as you can see. Since the inception in 1975 to 2021 till date, we have been adding metrics, we have been adding more and more information to the journal citation reports, as I said earlier, for you to be able to make informed decisions about where do I need to submit, which journals I need in my library collection, etc. Having said this, what is it in the journal citation reports 2021 that is so different? I think the biggest change that we have done is including content from arts and humanities and Web of Science, emerging sources citation index in the Web of Science. Earlier, the journal citation reports was way more selective, where we were including content from only two indexes on the Web of Science. That was the Science Citation Index Expanded and the Social Science Citation Index Expanded. And the journal citation reports was known as a definitive source for journal impact factor. So all the journals which were there on the JCR were the ones that could be awarded a journal impact factor. Now we have realized that with the changing and the ever dynamic and ever changing publication trends, a lot more people today are publishing in emerging sources citation index. Now, emerging sources citation index, or it be it arts and humanities citation index, any journal on the Web of Science Pro collection undergoes the same quality check for peer review information, for editorial board information, and a host of other, criteria. We have 24 in all. And because in order to make it more accessible to the scholarly community, for them to have more idea about where should they be publishing, we have now introduced a journal citation indicator, a new metric. So after a very long time, we have actually introduced a new metric on journal citation reports. We still have the journal impact factor. We have not made any changes to the way the journal impact factor is calculated, or which are the journals from which indexes that get awarded the journal impact factor. But we have also introduced a new metric for these journals, which we are gleaning from the arts and humanities and the emerging sources citation index, so that you can have one single journal level metric that can be easily interpreted and compared against disciplines. And we have basically redesigned the entire user interface so you can visualize and intuitively explore the rich layered data in a very new user-friendly manner. So as I said, the Arts and Humanities Citation Index and the Emerging Sources Citation Index have met the same rigorous quality criteria. So again, a reiteration. If a journal is a part of the Web of Science Pro collection, it necessarily needs to meet the quality criteria. The journals which are there in the social sciences and the Science Citation Index Expanded, the flagship indexes, these are the ones which have shown global citation impact. Their citation impact is better than other journals in the discipline. They have a more global citation footprint. Their readership base is not necessarily localized. These are the journals which make the cut to the flagship indexes. We would not award the journal impact factor earlier to the arts and humanities citation index, because the arts and humanities do not necessarily follow a very citation heavy pattern for understanding impact of a publication. Publications that get highly cited are original research articles and review articles. These are the kind of articles which you will find more in the hard sciences and the social sciences, not necessarily in the arts and humanities, which have a more diverse set of publication types. They could be book reviews, it could be a poetry, it could be a television play, which is a part of the journal or the. So would not have. It would not have been correct to assess it on the same standards as we would have assessed a journal in the sciences or the social sciences. Having said that, we would not now provide AHCI with the journal impact factor, but we have now decided that they do need a complete coverage in the JCR. They do need a metric to show how are they performing, how are these journals in these fields performing vis-a-vis others. Emerging Sources Citation Index represents scholarly content from emerging economies. These are journals which have more localized content. These are newer journals. They still do not have they have not had time to maybe build impact as of yet and have not been awarded the journal impact factor. But in order to make confident decisions about publishing, about which collections should I have in my library, we have decided to award them a new metric, which is the journal citation indicator. So the journal citation indicator actually harnesses another Clarivate measure, which is the category normalized citation impact. Now, let me explain a bit about normalization. I'm sure all of you would agree if I said that different subject areas have different citation patterns. If you cannot compare just by the gross citation counts a journal which is publishing, let's say, in the area of biochemistry with a journal which is publishing in the area of mathematics. Interdisciplinary fields which have more cross-disciplinary applications typically get more citations than more basic sciences and niche fields. So normalization is extremely important. So when we normalize, what do? We normalize with respect to three different criteria. We normalize when we are comparing two journals and we are normalizing the citations for the articles published in these two journals. We'll normalize for the year of publication because we know that citations are a function of time. They take time to accrue. So it does not matter whether there are citations, there are publications which have been published, let's say 3 years earlier, they might perform better than a publication that is being published a year earlier. But just the raw citation count does not mean that that 3-year-old publication is more relevant to the community as the publication published last year. It just means that that publication has had more time to accrue citations. So having said that, when we are normalizing, as I said, the first criterion, we're normalizing across disciplines. We will be normalizing with respect to time, and we'll also be normalizing with respect to document type. We understand that review articles get cited more than original research articles. So now when we have the journal citation indicator, it will provide you a single journal level metric whereby you can understand how the journal is performing. So if you have the documents which have a JCI of, let's say, 1, that means it is performing on par with the global average. If it has a journal citation indicator of 2, that means it has twice the impact of that of average in that particular subject category. This should help researchers draw better informed conclusions about journal impact. Now, how does it supplant a journal impact factor? Not at all. We'll still have the journal impact factor for journals that are in the social sciences and the sciences citation indexes. Along with that, this is the new metric. So very importantly, in the JCR 2021, we have increased the coverage for journals which are coming from AHCI, that's the Arts and Humanities Citation Index, and those from the ESCI, that is the Emerging Sources Citation Index. They will have been awarded the Journal Citation Indicator. The journals which are there from SCIE and SSCI will have a Journal Citation Indicator with the Journal Impact Factor. So as we said, how does it, let us just see how does it get, calculated? So we have already talked about how it is a field normalized metric. So for the 2020, the journal citation indicator is collected for journals that have published items in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So we are taking the citable items for 3 years. This is in direct comparison with the journal impact factor, where we consider for 2 years. The value of the journal citation indicator is the mean category normalized citation impact for all articles and reviews published in the most recent 3 years, 2017 to 2019 for the 2020 indicator value. Let us again rehearse what exactly or revisit what is the journal impact factor. Journal impact factor, as you know, is the citations to the journal in the JCR year to items published in the previous 2 years. So if you remember the journal citation indicator that considered items published in the last 3 years, for the year 2020, we would be considering only 2018 and 2019 published articles for calculating the journal impact factor. And we will be looking at the citations to these items in the year 2020. So to this give you a very simple example. Let's say I have this hypothetical journal ABC, Journal of ABC. And Journal of ABC in the year 2020 received 400 citations to the 50 articles published in 2018 and the 30 articles published in 2019. So in all, how many articles am I considering? 50 plus 30, that makes 80, right? And how many citations am I considering? The ones in 2020, that's 400. So what would be my journal impact factor? It would be 400 divided by 80, and that would be 5. So for 2021, the JCR year, for considering the data would be 2020, because that is the last year for which I had the entire citation data. We are still in the middle of 2021. I hope that is clear. So now that we have a good idea of what is a journal citation indicator and the journal impact factor, let us just try to understand the commonalities and the differences between these two metrics. As I said, the journal citation indicator is in no way supplanting the JIS. It is designed to complement the JIS and other metrics which are already present in the journal citations report. So in the addition to the use of normalization, there are several key differences. Well, first, does the journal impact factor consider all Web of Science co-collection journals? No. The journal impact factor is only for Science Citation Index and the social sciences, whereas the journal citation indicator considers all the journals which are present in the Web of Science co-collection. Is the journal impact factor normalized? No. That is the reason why we always say you should not be comparing two journal impact factors to understand which is a better journal until and unless they are in the same subject area. So that's the reason why on Web of Science, on journal citation reports, we have a concept called as quartiles and ranking category. So in a particular subject area, we will arrange all the journals which have been awarded a JIF in the descending order, and those journals that fall in the top 25% are known as quartile 1. So typically when an institute makes a mandate to be publishing in high impact journals, they say we are publishing in Q1 journals. Just saying that a journal with an impact factor of 4 is better than an impact factor of, let's say, 5 does not make sense, because you need to still know which subject area does that journal belong to. What is the median impact factor of all the journals in a particular subject area? For example, if I had to look in cell biology, the median impact factor of the journals on Web of Science, on the Science Citation Index, in cell biology is 3.6, whereas for mathematics is 0.794. So you can see the vast difference. So it is not a normalized citation metric, journal impact factor, whereas the JCI is. So if I can now compare using the JCI, a journal in the arts and humanities with a journal in, let's say, the Science Citation Index. Because all the JCI tells me is how is the journal performing with respect to other journals in that particular field. So when I say I have a journal, I have published a journal which has a JCI of 0.75, that can be compared to a journal, another very disparate field, which has a journal citation index of, let's say, 1.2. Because it is field normalized, 1.2 is better than 0.74. Uh, does it count citations from the entire co-collection? Yes. Does it count citations of the current year only? For the journal impact factor, absolutely yes. For the journal citation indicator, no. We are counting citations from the past 3 years. Both of these metrics include early access content. Does the journal impact factor include unlinked citations? Yes. None of these metrics allow for fractional counting. So we are not going to be fractionally counting or giving, a fractional weightage to the order of authors, to, the other different metrics. Also, the GIS calculation, as I said, is based on citations made in the current year, whereas very, very important, the JCI counts citation from any time period following publication up to the end of the current year. So just to reiterate again, the JCI is complementing the GIS and is in no way a substitute for the GIS. Another thing which is very, new in the JCR 2020 is that early access. How are we indexing early access items? So we have introduced the early access articles in the expanded coverage in the 2021 JCR release. And how do we index them is where the early access date is in a different calendar year than the final publication date, we will use only the early access date and the data for calculating the metrics. And this basically affect items which are indexed with an early access date of 2020 or later. For all of you who have been very used to using journal citation reports, you will now see a more vibrant, a more intuitive UI. It allows you to, compare journals. So you will have you can customize your experience. So earlier it was difficult to compare between categories, between publishers. You had to have more number of clicks. We have now put all the metrics on one interface. You can just select the appropriate filters. You also get an idea. So for example, right on the page, if you notice over here, it tells you that we have 26,000 plus journals, which are a part of the new JCR. They are spread across 279 categories, and we have 8,000 plus publishers with their journals on the JCR. So if you are comparing, if you are looking across citation indexes, you can choose the schema and the filter you need for making your analysis, which was a little bit more complicated in the earlier versions of JCR. We have interactive charts. This is very important. The citation distribution that we saw earlier, now we have a more interactive, intuitive citation distribution. So basically what the citation distribution does is it shows the frequency with which items published in the year or two prior were cited in the JCR data year. This graph has the same functionality as the journal impact factor trend graph. So you can hover over the data across each data point and try to see how have each of these document types been getting cited in that particular year. And all of these are exportable, these metrics and these graphs. So especially for librarians, if you get a question from, let's say, your patrons in your institution that I want to know more about a particular journal, the entire journal profile page with all of these graphs is exportable as a PDF. You can just, input the name of the journal in the journal citation reports, go to the journal profile page, extract all the data in a very user-friendly, easy to understand PDF, and that can be used by your researcher. or faculty. Now, earlier, if you remember, when we ranked by journal impact factor, as I said, you would have a journal impact factor not having meaning if you did not understand these metrics in the context of the subject area. And often what we would see is that a particular journal could be in two different subject areas. Sometimes a particular subject area is also looked at through the lens of two different indexes. So for example, this particular journal called Nursing is a part of the Science Citation Index as well as Social Sciences Citation Index. In Science Citation Index, it is a quartile 3 journal, but it is a quartile 2 journal in SSCI. Now you can understand how this context of category affects the rank and per quartile and percentile across these two different categories in the new journal citation reports interface. We have made the open access data that is available for a journal much more user-friendly and easy to interpret. So for example, when I talk about the open access items on JCR, it allows me to identify reputable journals that can make your article available at open access at the time of publication. How many of these items have actually, become open access after a period of time? All of this helps you understand how the journal's access model impacts the scholarly discourse within your community. So you can see the items vis-a-vis the citations, right? So it can help you understand how is open access in that particular field affecting citations and therefore influence the decision. Do I really need to publish in an open access journal, or do I need to publish in a journal that has a short embargo period or allows me to self-archive after a period? Because I notice in that particular subject area, having open access publications gets me a much more citations as compared to an article behind a paywall. So you can see in the example 1, 32% of the open access publications in that particular journal are getting 63% of the citations, whereas in the example 2, you can notice 60% of the OA publications. The numbers have now flipped. So does it really matter in example 2 that I should be publishing as an open access article? No. But surely in the first example, the open access factor is making a significant contribution to the number of citations articles are getting. As I said, the journal profile is in a single page. There's ongoing transparency. You can see the journal information, the publisher information, along with all the information that you find on JIF, JCI, etc. Now let us look a little bit more in detail about what are the other different metrics on the journal citation reports. So these are the other metrics that I have listed over here, which are seen in the journal citation reports along with the JCR and the JCI and the GIF. So we start with the first one, which is the immediacy index. So immediacy index, as the name suggests, tells you how immediately or how quickly your article can get cited in the year it is published. Now, the formula for calculating immediacy index is citation from the JCR year to the items in that JCR year. So for the year 2021, that's JCR 2021 release, for a journal, the immediacy index will be calculated by looking at the citable items in that particular journal in the year 2020 and seeing the citation. So let us say again a hypothetical journal ABC that has got 50 publications in the year 2020. These 50 publications in the year 2020 have got 30 citations in the same year. So what would my immediacy index be? It will be 30 divided by 50. So remember, when you're comparing journals which are specializing in cutting edge research, the immediacy index can provide a useful perspective on how quickly your articles can get cited, how much breakthrough science is being published in that particular journal, how rapidly your citations will materialize. For a publisher, the immediacy index is an indicator that can be used to evaluate journals in the immediate term. It can answer questions about the speed of new content citation, and it can also compare immediacy index to competing journals. Are their material getting cited faster than ours? Next is the eigenfactor. The eigenfactor score was released by the University of Washington under the academic research project named Eigenfactor Project. And we have a data agreement. We at Clarivate have a data agreement with this project. Clarivate shares the raw citation data, and then the project calculates scores that are published in the JCR. It is very simple, similar to the 5-year impact factor. So please remember, the journal impact factor is also given for the latest journal citation year. It also is given for, how it has performed for the 5 years, last 5 years. Similar to the 5-year journal impact factor, the eigenfactor score relies on 5 years of data. It is based on the number of times articles from that particular journal published in the last 5 years have been cited in this JCR year. And this calculation, very, very importantly, excludes self-citations. And this considers the calculation of eigenfactor score, considers which journals have contributed to these citations. So highly cited journals will influence the network more than lesser cited journals. So unlike the journal impact factor calculation, where the source of the citation does not matter, in the eigenfactor calculation, where are you getting the citation from is a big metric for understanding where, how it performs on the eigenfactor. Normalized eigenfactor is when we compare the different eigenfactors. So if you say an eigenfactor of 5, that means that journal is performing 5 times better than other journals in that particular subject area. Let us now go to the article influence score that is also from the eigenfactor project. That determines, the article influence score determines the average influence of a journal's articles over the first 5 years after publication. So the mean article influence for any article is 1. So if you have a score more than 1, that shows me that this article has performed above average. It has an above average influence, whereas a score lesser than 1 indicates that each article in that journal has below average influence. So how do you use these metrics? When you have 2 journals, let's say you're confused between 2 journals which are in the same subject area, you see that the journal impact factor looks similar. Now you have another metric, the JCI. Even the JCI is, let's say one is 0.75, the another is 0.85. These are other metrics that can help you make the decision, where do I publish? Do I want to publish in a journal which will get citations more quickly? Then for me, the immediacy index makes sense. Do I want to publish in a more prestigious journal? Then that I look at eigenfactor and article influence score. The cited half-life and the cited half-life are very important factors for the librarians for building their collection. The cited half-life refers to the median age of citations received by a journal during the JCR year. A citation's age is equal to the publication year of the citing item, that is the JCR year, in this case 2020, minus the publication year of the cited item. So by definition, half of a journal's earned citations are to items published before the cited half-life. So if I say a journal has a cited half-life of 4, it means the median age of citations is 4 years. Half of these citations are to items older than 4 years, and half of the citations are to items newer than 4 years. So how can I use the cited half-life? The cited half-life is a good measure if you're interested at looking in a journal and finding out if older or newer material in that journal is receiving attention. It is an important metric for librarians in deciding how much of the archival content of the journal you should be having in your institution. So let us say you have a journal whose cited half-life is 4, and are looking for purchasing, let's say, a 20-year-old, backfile data. They It means that older issues are not being cited much, right? Because the half-life is just 4. So the librarian might decide to have only 8 years of archives or backfile data, but not 20 years. So especially when you are developing the archival content of a particular journal at an institution, do look at the cited half-life. Conversely, citing half-life looks at citations given by the journal in that JCR. So it is specifically defined as the median age of citations produced by the journal during the JCR year. So what do you mean by citing half-life? It is talking about the outbound citations. So if you have a citing half-life of 4, it means that the half of the citations that the journal is quoting, those are from items newer than 4 years. So it basically tells you how the journal interacts with published literature of the field. This is a good metric to understand how to create the bibliography for your manuscript. If you see a journal which has a longer citing half-life, maybe as a researcher, you need to ensure that your articles are also citing literature which are older. That means there's a trend in that journal to cite older literature in their publications. So with this, we end our presentation on the journal citation reports. I'll just reiterate and recap what we have learned today. The most important and exciting feature of JCR 2021 release is the fact that in addition to the traditionally indexed SSCI and SCI data, now we are indexing all the journal content on the Web of Science collection. So you have journals from ASCI and ESCI. But just being indexed on JCR does not mean anything. We have now created this new JCI metric, Journal Citation Indicator metric, which is a field normalized citation metric, which is considering citations to items published in the last 3 years. And this indicator, the JCI, allows you to compare different journals in disparate subject areas. It is a complement to the journal impact factor. The journal impact factor is still being awarded to articles from journals which are in the Science Citation and the Social Sciences Citation Index. That has not changed. Along with that, we have a plethora of different other metrics. We talked about immediacy index, which talks about how quickly you can get citations. We have talked about prestige metrics like article influence score and eigenfactor score. We have talked about the journal relationships with cited half-life and citing half-life. Along with all this data, the qualitative data about contributor, country, about which articles are driving impact, along with all of these quantitative metrics, give you a very 360-degree view of the information present about a journal. And all this information in totality should really help you make that decision. Which journal should I have for my institution? Where should I publish? So for librarians and researchers, please have a look at the JCR 2021 for all your collection development and manuscript publishing decisions. Thank you. We'll open up this conversation. We'll open up the floor for question and answer.
Hi, Subhashri. This is Jiho. We've got lots of questions coming in. How do we define disciplines?
Thank you. That's a rather important question. How do we define disciplines? So disciplines on JCR are based on the Web of Science categories. So Web of Science categories are a schema that has been developed for a very long time, a very standard schema, we have more than 250 disciplines across all the subject areas. Just go to Google and you can have the scope notes. So on JCR, we actually give you scope notes about what does a discipline entail. So for example, if let's say material sciences, and I say material science textile, what exactly does material science textile have? So that scope note gives you all the idea. So when I talk about disciplines on JCR, we are based on the Web of Science categories. Does that answer the question, Jiho?
Yeah, thank you, Subhashri. Somewhat related to that is, I think there's some confusion about the different indices we have within Web of Science. So what are the differences between, say, the Science Citation Index, Social Sciences, Emerging Sources Citation Index, and so on? Perhaps you can briefly recap that.
Absolutely. So when I talk about the Science Citation Index Expanded, that's a collection of around more than 9,000 journals. And these journals are from all the areas of science and technology. So engineering disciplines, you're talking about biology, chemistry, physics, all of them will be indexed in Science Citation Index Expanded. Then we have the Social Sciences Citation Index. Now, the Social Sciences Citation Index is for all the social sciences. So we're talking about business, management, political science, psychology, they all come under social sciences. Arts and humanities are about linguistics, anthropology, language, literature. Now, these are the three flagship indexes. Okay, so when you, so I really urge all of you to have a look at the journal inclusion criteria essay, which is there on our blog. Link to that will be there in our presentation also that we'll be sharing in the future with you all. So if you go to the journal inclusion criteria, you'll see that we have a set of 28 criteria for including journals in the co-collection. Every journal needs to follow the 24 quality criteria. So quality criteria, one of the biggest thrusts in that area is the fact that any journal on Web of Science needs to show evidence of quality and rigorous peer review. Okay, and transparency in information related to editorial board, etc. So once a journal has fulfilled the 24 quality criteria, it gets indexed on Web of Science, typically via the Emerging Sources Citation Index. So a couple of decades ago, we realized that the flagship indexes were disproportionately showing content from the very research-heavy demographies like Western Europe, Northern America, etc. But there's a lot of scholarly content from emerging economies like South Asia, Latin America, Russia, and the CIS states. So in order to have a more inclusive, bouquet of scholarly literature, we introduced the Emerging Sources Citation Index. Now, the journals in Emerging Sources Citation Index are subject agnostic. 7,500 plus journals. They don't follow a particular subject area. They're subject agnostic. However, these journals have not necessarily shown global citation impact. So when you enter the co-collection, you enter via the Emerging Sources Citation Index route. You stay there for some years. If the journal performs well, it can be moved into one of the three flagship indexes based on the subject area it is in. Does that clarify the differences between all the four indexes? Emerging sources, arts and humanities, science citation, and social science citation. And just to add one point, we have a lot of questions from people asking about SCI and SCIE. So please remember, as of 2020, the Science Citation Index has been sunsetted. We have one consolidated index, a collection of journals in science and technology. On Web of Science, the flagship index is called Science Citation Index Expanded. 9,000 plus journals in that particular citation index. I hope that answers the question, Jiho.
Thanks, Subhashri. We've got a few more minutes. We'll do a couple more questions. And if we haven't had time to get through to your question, we'll respond to you separately. So when you're comparing journals in the same field, what are the top indicators you would look at, Subhashri?
Right. So if I'm comparing journals in the same field, I am going to look at the journal impact factor, because if you remember, the journal impact factor is not a field normalized indicator. It is specific to a particular research discipline or subject area. So in a particular subject area, let's take, for example, biochemistry and molecular biology. In that area, I can very well compare two journals with the journal impact factor. I'll be looking at the quartile and the ranking category. That is again based on the GIF. I will also be looking at the journal citation indicator because that takes into account more number of years. It is a field normalized indicator. I'll also be looking at immediacy index because based on the content of my own manuscript, right? So if I think my manuscript is very contemporary, I should be getting citations, and I mean, a prime period for getting citations are the next 2 years, then I should be publishing in a journal that gets citations more quickly, and thereby immediacy index comes into play. Let's say I have two journals which have very similar journal impact factor. I can also look at the eigenfactor because that excludes self-citations and is a measure of how the journal behaves in that research discipline in connection with other journals. I'll be looking at GIF, quartile, immediacy index, and the eigenfactor score. These are the top indicators that I'll be looking at.
Fantastic. Thanks, Subhashri. We've got a question here about, is there a platform in Clarivate where we can compare a couple of journals and it'll auto-generate a report for easier comparison and review?
Can I have the second question, part of the question, easier comparison and?
Well, I think they're referring to, I think we can talk a little bit about insights where you can compare
Yes.
easily.
Yes, so you can compare, of course, as Jiho mentioned, you can compare journals, and I have also mentioned you can browse across categories on, journal citation reports. You can, for example, I can just input 5 different journals and try to see how the journal impact factor and how their JCI or their immediacy indexes are varying, what is the trend graph over the past 5 years, etc. But we also have a benchmark and analysis tool called Insights that allows you to deep dive even more into the journal. So we talked a lot about the descriptive open access data. We talked a lot about contributing country, etc. So all that, those comparisons can also be done on Insights. So 4 different journals, where are these 4 different journals getting their, citations from, which countries, which organizations? So, you're going one step more than journal citation reports when you're looking at insights to understand the journal. So for the first level of comparison with respect to the journal metrics, journal citation reports, if you're a publisher and you need more data, more in-depth analysis, do look at insights. Jiho?
Thanks, Subhashri. And last question, what are unlinked citations?
So unlinked citations are those citations which have not been, linked. So there could be some articles which are in the last years which are not linked to other articles. So those are called as unlinked citations in terms of calculating the journal impact factor. Unlinked citations are not considered for calculation of the metric journal citation indicator because we are looking at the metric from the perspective of different fields. So in case of journal citation indicator, we are not looking at unlinked citations. Hello.
Great, thanks, Subhashri. We're almost at the top of the hour, so I think we'll close our session now. Thanks to everyone that has attended. If we haven't managed to get to your questions, we'll respond to those separately. And we'll also share the recording with everyone via email in a couple of days' time. So thanks very much, Subhashri, for a very interesting webinar.
Thank you so much.